Today we are discussing one of the most hype and powerful groups in the world of One Piece, the Admirals, all known ones in history and their powers explained, so make sure to stay tuned for this one. A lot of new information has been revealed about the group since the last Admirals video, including Luffy versus Kizaru, including way more information about Greenbull, including Kuzan versus Garp, and much more. So get hyped. If you enjoy seeing One Piece videos like this one and want to keep them coming, chill the parking within and smash that like button. Always be a smashing pirate king rather than a passing government elder. Make this the video you join the Nakama by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss future One Piece videos and updates. We are not far now from my insane dream of 2 million subscribers here on YouTube, so I would be eternally grateful if you help us reach that goal with the push of one virtual button. Now, without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. So briefly, the rank of Admiral is the second highest rank in the Marines. There are only 3 Admirals at a time. Above them is the Fleet Admiral, the highest Marine rank. Although the Fleet Admiral commands the entire organization, he is still ranked below the World Government Commander-in-Chief, the 5 Elders, and the mysterious Imu-sama. The Admirals are known as the World Government's greatest military power since each of them is ridiculously strong. Admirals, including of course the Fleet Admiral, can issue buster calls on islands that are deemed to be threats. Let's start off with the 55-year-old Red Dog Sakazuki, who is over 10 feet tall, by the way. He used to be an admiral, and at that time, he went by the alias Akainu or Akainu if you prefer, which literally translates to red, Aka, and dog, Inu. However, now that he's Fleet Admiral, he goes by Sakazuki. When former Fleet Admiral Sengoku stepped down, he wanted Aokiji, aka Kuzan, to take the job, but dignitaries within the world government pushed for Sakazuki. So the two fought a one-on-one duel. The winner would seize the right to command the Marines. They were evenly matched for 10 whole days before Sakazuki emerged victorious, also taking Kuzan's leg in the process. Aokiji then left the Marines, apparently not wanting to work for Sakazuki. Sakazuki was the most ruthless of all the Admirals, which is probably why Sengoku favored Aokiji. Sakazuki is thorough in trying to stamp out whatever or whoever he deems to be evil or a threat to absolute justice. As a result, he killed Ace and badly scarred Luffy. The new Fleet Admiral is the kind of guy that would rather sacrifice innocent lives than let one guilty person get away, which was shown when he destroyed a refugee ship because one rule-breaking scholar might have made it on board. In contrast, Kuzan said he would never go as far as that and called Sakazuki a jerk. The current Fleet Admiral was even willing to kill Kobe, a Marine, just because he wanted the battle at Marineford to end. Sakazuki is definitely an ends justify the means kind of guy, and he will do anything to bring about a world of absolute justice. Sakazuki is even willing to talk back to the 5 Elders when they get in the way of his vision, which is pretty impressive. Even the powerful Blackbeard decides to run away from the Magma Admiral, stating that he's not ready for that battle yet, even though he has Whitebeard's Devil Fruit at this point and some of the world's worst criminals on his crew. I bet Blackbeard would feel much more comfortable taking him on now that he has Kuzan on the crew. Sakazuki possesses the Magu Magu no Mi, aka the Magmag Fruit. This Logia Devil Fruit lets him create, manipulate, and become magma. Sakazuki's Devil Fruit appeared to be of a higher order than Ace's initially. It's been said that because of magma's unique properties and its higher temperature, Sakazuki's attack injures Ace despite his Logia defenses. At the same time, in a previous video, it was commented that fire can actually reach a higher temperature than magma, even if magma is hotter than your average fire. This raises the exciting potential of Sabo being able to bring out more of the Flame Fruit's potential and get revenge for Ace, although honestly for me, it's hard to see such a big opponent being beaten by Sabo, especially after he scarred Luffy and has so much history with Luffy. I've also read theories that magma absorbs fire and that's why Sakazuki could get through Ace's defenses, or he just used Haki, but let me know your favorite interpretation in the comments. Anyways, the Magma Admiral's Logia powers are so strong that he was able to permanently change the climate of Punk Hazard. He can use Armament Haki and Observation Haki, and in fact all Marines ranked Vice Admiral and up can use Haki. It has not been confirmed that Sakazuki has Conqueror's Haki, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't given his power and important leader status. In fact, Oda was the first to hype up Sakazuki. He said before that Sakazuki is so strong that he could end the One Piece series within a year if he were the protagonist, and he said that back in 2012. Given the recent importance placed on Haki, and especially on Conqueror's Haki, and how it's way more important than Fruit powers, it seems pretty obvious that Sakazuki has it to me. All in all, this dude is definitely a worthy antagonist for Luffy given his power and history with our protagonist, and since Gear 5 Luffy was able to use advanced Haki to punch Magma Kaido without making physical contact, and thus without melting his arm, he might be ready to take on the Red Dog too. Let me know what you think below. Is Luffy ready to take on the current fleet admiral? For number 2, let's look at the currently 49-year-old Kuzan, aka Aokiji. Before Kuzan gave up being an admiral, he went by Aokiji, which means blue pheasant. After he lost his fight against Sakazuki, Kuzan left the Marines and joined Blackbeard of all people, becoming the Titanic captain of the 10th ship. This was a very curious turn. On the one hand, it makes Blackbeard, who was already presented as being a force to be reckoned with, seem even stronger. On the other hand, Kuzan could be a spy. It is weird that Sakazuki let him survive their battle and didn't seem that bothered when news of him helping Blackbeard spread. So it could be that they set it up so that Kuzan would help the Marines by keeping a close eye on Blackbeard. We'll see what ends up happening, but it definitely seems strange that the Sengoku recommended Kuzan would join forces with Blackbeard, especially since Kuzan seemed like the nicest guy out of the 3 former admirals. Kuzan, for his part, is 9 foot 9 inches tall, so he's a bit shorter than Sakazuki, and he's way more laid back than the current fleet admiral, practicing his own form of lazy justice rather than absolute justice. However, more accurately, he has his own moral compass. Unlike Sakazuki, he's compassionate at times. He's willing to help a child Robin escape a buster call, and he is willing to not arrest the young Luffy after he helps people by defeating Crocodile. Unlike Sakazuki, Kuzan wouldn't want to sacrifice a number of innocent lives just to get rid of one potentially guilty person. Kuzan is no doubt very powerful, otherwise Sengoku would not have recommended him for Fleet Admiral, and he would not have lasted 10 days fighting against the extremely powerful Sakazuki. When a fight drags on for that long, you start to think that it may have gone either way if conditions were only slightly different. Sakazuki is even 6 years older, so it's at least possible that Kuzan could become stronger. It's also noteworthy that most Marine troops preferred Kuzan and supported him, showing that Kuzan is a good leader who has the ability to positively influence others. This ability to lead also hints at the fact that he could be a Conqueror's Haki user as well. He's powerful enough to easily scare off someone as powerful as Doflamingo. He was able to battle with Whitebeard until Diamond Jozu, one of Whitebeard's commanders, entered the fray, allowing Whitebeard to move on. Kuzan took advantage of a distraction and eventually took Jozu down without much trouble. My point is, he can clearly fight with the best of them, and we're about to see how true that is. More recently, we saw how he joined Blackbeard after they bonded over drinks. At this point, he was at rock bottom, having lost his leg and career to Sakazuki, and then Blackbeard offered him a position. Although Kuzan said he didn't trust them, Blackbeard pointed out that they don't have to be best friends. They are pirates, which just means they need aligned interests. And as a free man, Kuzan agreed to join him. Then we saw him help defeat the legend himself, Marine hero Garp, who was also his mentor. It even appeared that he ended him by impaling him with ice. Yes, Garp was past his prime, but the fact that Kuzan helped defeat Marine hero Garp while Captain Blackbeard and other key members were away makes the Blackbeard pirates look very formidable indeed. Garp, through his actions, helped Kobe and the others escape. But since Kobe is a member of SWORD, and thus not even an official Marine now, this has to look like a big Blackbeard win and like a big Marine loss. Especially since Garp, like each Admiral, has a whopping 3 billion berry bounty given out by Cross Guild. Now let's look at Kuzan's Devil Fruit powers more closely. He ate the Ice fruit. This Logia fruit lets him create, manipulate, and become ice. He can easily freeze miles of ocean and even giant tsunamis. He can freeze his enemies and then easily shatter their bodies. Kuzan's Logia powers, like Sakazuki's, are strong enough to permanently change the climate of an area, as we saw with Punk Hazard. What's especially cool about Kuzan, pun intended, is that he can avoid the most common threat of Devil Fruit users by freezing the seawater below him. Thus, if he's ever in a position where he's about to fall in and drown, he can just freeze the water. He regularly uses his freezing powers to travel across the sea, and the fact that he just bikes over the sea makes him all the more awesome, not to mention hilarious. What is perhaps the most impressive thing about Kuzan's power is how he is able to survive some Haki-imbued attacks like they were nothing. For instance, when Whitebeard stabbed through him with his Haki-imbued weapon, Kuzan was able to come out of it fine. That's a whole other level of Logia mastery right there. It appears like Kuzan was able to make a hole in his body before the weapon penetrated him and thus avoided the damage. Obviously, this wouldn't work as well when he's being punched with Haki-infused fists, as happened during his fight against Garp. He clearly took damage during this fight, but it must be said he didn't take significant damage. He was even still standing by the end of it, while Garp lay on the ground, an impressive feat even if he did have help, like when Invisible Shiryu stabbed Garp. Kuzan also possesses Observation Haki and Armament Haki. And if my rational speculation about Sakazuki is correct, it's almost certain that Kuzan, who fought him for 10 days and now beat Garp, is also an unconfirmed Conqueror's Haki user. Honestly, considering how many characters have Conqueror's Haki, including Kid who just got one-shotted by Shanks, it wouldn't even be that surprising if all Admirals have Conqueror's Haki at this point. Haki aside, Kuzan can form sharp weapons out of his ice and use them to attack his opponents. Just look at how he finished off Garp with a giant spike of ice. All in all, Kuzan is more than a force to be reckoned with, and he's already proven to be an insane addition to the Blackbeard crew. I mean, think about it. Now Blackbeard has a guy that was strong enough to be Fleet Admiral, and a guy who fought Sakazuki for 10 days working under him. It's insane to think about, but let me know if you think he is truly a Blackbeard pirate, or if you think he's undercover, in which case, perhaps the spike that appeared to finish Garp off might have actually been a way to stop the bleeding that Shiryu's attack started. We know characters can be frozen and unfrozen later, so it's possible, but personally, I'd like to think that Kuzan is truly a Blackbeard pirate and not a double agent, and hear me out, it's because it will make for a much more epic final clash between the Straw Hats and the Blackbeard pirates. Not to mention it would be kind of predictable if he was a member of SWORD. And remember, if you're thinking Kuzan is too good of a guy to be working with Blackbeard, Whitebeard also worked for Xebec. The fact is, like Blackbeard said, if their interests align, it might not matter that their morals don't. Next, let's look at Luffy's latest opponent, the current 58-year-old Borsalino, aka Kizaru. His Admiral alias means Yellow Monkey. The usually grinning Kizaru is the only remaining Admiral from the pre-timeskip trio since Sakazuki was promoted to Fleet Admiral and Kuzan resigned. Kizaru is also tall at 9 feet 11 inches. These three Admirals towered over most people in height and strength in the pre-timeskip One Piece, even if they feel less untouchable these days. Borsalino is the oldest, and that's definitely also reflected by the wrinkles on his face. His form of justice is explained by Oda as unclear justice. He's not as moral as Kuzan has been at times, but he's also not as much of an extremist as Sakazuki and wouldn't take as much initiative. Kizaru prefers to follow orders rather than lead, so he may well be the only one out of the three without Conqueror's Haki, since that clearly doesn't sound like Conqueror energy. But again, you got Zoro with Conqueror's Haki following Luffy, so in the end, who knows? Kizaru isn't a cold-blooded machine, and recently, we've seen that he wanted to avoid hurting his former student Sentomaru if possible, not to mention Bonnie. He really wanted Sentomaru to just not get in the way of his mission, but even if he doesn't want to hurt certain people, there is something that always makes him prioritize the mission and his orders. And ultimately, he will choose to follow orders, even if it means taking out people like Sentomaru or Bonnie, who we now know is only 12 years old. I'm hoping that soon we'll see what is this thing, whether a revealing formative flashback or something else that makes him always prioritize following orders over following his feelings. In regards to combat, he's among the best. He's extremely fast, his Logia fruit lets him attack and move at the speed of light, he clashed against legends like Silver's Rayleigh and Whitebeard and came out fine. He also attacked Luffy after Shanks' first mate Ben Beckman threatened him and even offered to go to Wano when he found out that Big Mom and Kaido formed an alliance. Think about how crazy that is for a second. Kaido and Big Mom were the two living Yonko with the highest bounties. Together they had a bounty around 9 billion berries. To put that in perspective, the Pirate King Goldie Roger had a bounty of around 5.5 billion berries. And Kizaru offers to go to Wano. Even Sakazuki is like, chill bro. So it's quite clear that Kizaru is not only extremely strong, but practically fearless. Most recently we saw him face off against Gear 5 Yonko Luffy, who is coming off of a win against the so-called strongest creature in the world, Kaido. And finally, we've seen Kizaru and Admiral hit a ceiling against Luffy. To be fair, Kizaru did better than I expected, and it definitely puts the Admirals in a more positive light, strength-wise. Before at least, I think the fandom felt like Yonko level is above Admiral level. Such tiers are problematic because there is such variation in Yonko strength levels and even in Admiral strength levels. But there really was that sense, at least until Buggy became a Yonko. But when we see someone like Kizaru push Gear 5 Luffy to the point where Luffy is temporarily out of commission, even though Luffy was strong enough to beat Kaido, it really makes the Admirals look good, especially since one would assume that Sakazuki and the one who challenged him, Kuzan, are even stronger. Still, it must be said, Luffy was too strong for Kizaru to plow through, and he kept running away and trying to complete his mission, while Luffy kept catching up. Then Luffy's Star Gun attack causes Kizaru to see stars. Yes, Luffy reaches his Gear 5 limit, but when asked about his rather sluggish work by Elder Saturn, Kizaru replies, "I'm sorry I failed you, and I don't think I'll be mobile anytime soon," end quote. The way I read this fight is that Gear 5 Luffy outclasses Kizaru, but the problem is the time limit of this draining form. And keep in mind, against Kaido, he used the form twice, where here he only used it once so far, leading us to believe that if he really needed to, he could pull off another Gear 5 transformation. So all in all, Luffy has gotten to the insane point where he can outclass some Yonko and even an Admiral, but Oda did a good job of making the once untouchable seeming Kizaru put up an impressive show against Luffy nonetheless. Kizaru's character definitely deserves that respect. However, if the Elders are stronger than the Admirals, as most of us assume, then it's clear that Luffy is far from done and he will continue to widen the gap between himself and someone like Kizaru this arc. Now let's briefly run through Kizaru's Devil Fruit power, the Pika Pika no Mi, aka the Glint Glint Fruit. It allows Kizaru to create control and become light. He can shoot laser beams, create lightsabers to fight with, and turn parts of his body into light and then hit his opponents with the force of light speed. Not only can he travel at the speed of light, he can also use mirrors or reflective surfaces to propel him so that he can get to any point he wishes to almost instantaneously, as if he were teleporting. This makes it all the more impressive that Luffy could catch up to him and take him out of commission. I assume that if Kizaru wasn't so fast and good at running away, Luffy wouldn't have had so much trouble with him. Kizaru is also skilled at using observation haki and armament haki. If I had to pick someone who's least likely to have Conqueror's haki out of the first 3 Admirals, as mentioned, it's Kizaru. But still, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if all Admirals had Conqueror's haki. Before we jump to the new Admirals, let's look at the now 79-year-old Sengoku the Buddha. Before he was Fleet Admiral, he too was an Admiral. He's one of the legendary OGs along with Garp, Whitebeard, Goldie Roger, Captain Rocks, and so on. Sengoku was one of the Marines that Pirate King Goldie Roger respected the most, the other being Garp. And with Garp, Sengoku even defeated Shiki the Golden Lion, one of Roger's greatest pirate rivals. At the Battle of Marineford, he is able to restrain Garp and send all of the skilled Blackbeard pirates flying backwards with one of his attacks. He's no longer in his prime, but he's clearly still one of the strongest characters in the series. He possesses the Hito Hito no Mi, model Daibutsu, aka the Human Fruit, model Buddha. Now I assume I don't have to tell you that this is a mythical zone fruit, a class rarer than even Logia type fruits. This fruit allows its user to transform into a large golden Buddha. His strength is magnified in this form, giving his blows immense destructive power. He can also release powerful shockwaves in this form. I would assume that he has to have one of the best non-haki related defenses when he's transformed. Sengoku, unlike the other skilled admirals on this list, is confirmed to be able to use all 3 types of haki, including the rare Conqueror's haki. Next, let's look at Admiral Zephyr, the non-canon admiral from One Piece film Z. And if you haven't checked this movie out, I highly recommend it. It's my favorite of the One Piece movies. Z, aka Black Arm Zephyr, was a former Marine Admiral and even instructor who trained Sakazuki, Kuzan, and Kizaru, if you can believe it. He was an Admiral during Roger and Prime Whitebeard's time, hyping him up even more. He didn't rely on a devil fruit, but rather on his impressive haki mastery, as his nickname Black Arm Zephyr alludes to. He clearly wasn't at his prime during the events of the movie, since he was 74 years old. His mechanical arm, the Battle Smasher as it's called, is unique and pretty cool. The story goes he lost his arm when it was cut off by an unknown pirate with a devil fruit power. Almost his entire division was massacred, all but 2 of them. When this same pirate was invited to become a warlord, it was the final straw and Zephyr renounced the Marines and started the Neo Marines. It's a very cool idea because we know how corrupt the Marines are, and this guy, who'd seen that firsthand, decided to put a stop to it and started a new Marines organization. A very interesting backstory for an antagonist. As you can imagine, he replaced his missing arm with the mechanical arm, and a potential weakness became a strength. The arm is embedded with Sea Stone, making it very effective against Devil Fruit users, including Logia users like Kizaru. Throw a machine gun and a destructive cannon in it, and you have a very sweet all-around weapon. Ultimately, a Gear 2 Luffy weakens him, and a base level Luffy defeats him, so you can bet he won't be anywhere near the top of a strongest Admirals list, especially at this age. But he's a great character nonetheless, and helps make One Piece Film Z one of, if not the best, One Piece movies. If you have one One Piece movie that you like even more, let me know what it is in the comments. Next, we have one of the new Admirals, the 54-year-old Fujitora, which means Wisteria Tiger. He's one of the shorter admirals at 8 feet 10 inches tall. Like Kuzan, Fujitora is against the extremist view of absolute justice. As opposed to Sakazuki, who is willing to sacrifice the innocent, Fujitora prioritizes protecting people. He is blind and says that he earned his lack of sight by his own actions and that he shut his eyelids on his own after he saw too many things he didn't care for. However, after an encounter with Luffy, Fujitora supposes that he shouldn't have closed his eyes because he wants to take a look at Luffy's face to see how such an honest guy looks. In front of the entire world, Fujitora apologized to the proper king of Dressrosa, Riku, after Doflamingo is defeated and says that it was through the actions of pirates, gladiators, and citizens that the country seized victory. This is practically Sakazuki's worst nightmare, and Fujitora even chooses not to apologize to him after doing it. Fujitora and Admiral admits in the open that the Marines can do the wrong thing and make mistakes, while pirates can do the right thing and protect the innocent. You can't help but like the guy, who's willing to follow his own moral compass no matter what his superior, the Fleet Admiral, will think. Fujitora is strong enough to easily block attacks from former warlord Doflamingo, and Dressrosa Luffy couldn't do much to him either, except leave a positive impression. He could also clash with Sabo, the number 2 ranked member of the Revolutionaries, and an extremely skilled fighter in his own right, for an extended period of time without taking any significant damage. Now let's get into Fujitora's devil fruit, the Paramecia type Zushi Zushi no Mi. This fruit gives him gravity powers that he uses in conjunction with his sword. He can create gravitational forces that move horizontally or vertically. He can use downward gravity to trap an opponent in place, or he can use gravitational force to repel people and things away from himself. My favorite though is that he can even pull down meteorites from space, Madara style. Even someone as skilled and experienced as Doflamingo couldn't believe that this dude was bringing an actual meteorite down to the earth. Fujitora is also skilled at observation armament haki. He's been seen imbuing his sword with haki as well. His observation haki is what lets him fight effectively without vision, and it almost seems like it more than compensates for his lack of vision because he's so good with observation haki that he can sense people's emotions and thoughts, not just their fast physical movements. And the other new admiral we have to cover is Aramaki. His alias means Greenbull. This is the admiral we knew by far the least about when I made my previous versions of this video. We had seen his silhouette smiling and joking around with Fujitora, even while Sakazuki was mad at the latter. We knew Greenbull had long wavy hair and wore a marine coat. We also knew that he hadn't had a bite to eat for 3 years, but he did reveal his love of pretty ladies. We knew that he was strong enough to clash along with fellow Admiral Fujitora with the formidable captains of the Revolutionary Army. No small feat, especially for a man running on an empty stomach. Doflamingo had also said that there were rumors that both of the new admirals were powerful monsters. As with all of the other admirals, he knows observation armament haki. In previous versions of this video, I hyped up Greenbull because Oda kept him for last, shrouded in mystery, which is usually what shonen authors do for the stronger characters. But Greenbull's first introduction as a fighter sort of ended anticlimactically. More specifically, as we'll see, his hype was sort of sacrificed to hype up Shanks even more. There were lots of theories floating around about Greenbull before, including that he had a plant-based fruit power and that he was actually Zoro's father. One of these theories has already pretty much been confirmed. The reason I thought he might have plant-based powers was because of the green in his name and also the fact that he didn't eat, which suggested to me that he might get his nutrients through other means, like maybe photosynthesis. When he finally appeared in chapter 1052, it looked good for this theory, since he was seen flying around with a kind of flower helicopter sticking out from his back. Gotta hand it to the Admirals, they definitely have unique and fun ways of traveling. At this point, Sakazuki is asking him where is he through his snail phone, and Greenbull says in the air as if that helps narrow it down. It's moments like this that seem to support the idea of him being Zoro's father, since Zoro is legendary for his lack of direction sense. Anyways, Greenbull finally spots Wano ahead, and Sakazuki tells him, "Don't you dare make things any worse." And Greenbull simply says, I know, geez. Then we head to chapter 1053 where we see his power, face, and fruit abilities at work. Although his powers are plant related, his nutrient gaining process, which allows him to not eat, is much more deadly than photosynthesis. We see him launching roots all over the place that penetrate the former beast pirates, and he sucks nutrients from them in that way. In turn, the victims begin to look dried up and old. So I guess if Fujitora is similar to Madara with his meteor dropping powers, Greenbull is sort of similar to Hashirama with his wood style powers. The craziest part is that even King and Queen, 2 Yonko commanders with bounties of 1.32 billion and 1.39 billion respectively, are easily dealt with. Now yes, they were hurt during the fight and King is even shown with bandages, not to mention their loss of morale after losing the war, but still, it's been a week and Luffy and Zoro seem fine, so it still seems impressive. Furthermore, despite the fact that they were the strongest commanders of the so-called strongest creature in the world, and the Yonko with the highest bounty, Greenbull comments that a guy in his position can't go around getting beaten by pirate subordinates. Thus, even if they were in tip-top shape, the implication is that Greenbull would still crush them. And it's a big deal because we saw how Ben Beckman spoke with Admiral Kizaru at the Paramount War and the respect Kizaru seemed to give him. He commanded him at gunpoint not to do anything, and at first at least, Kizaru put his hands up and said, "Oops, you're Ben Beckman," end quote. Clearly showing a lot more respect to the Yonko commander than Greenbull showed Queen and King. Yes, it's likely in part because Ben Beckman is stronger than King and Queen, but it's still noteworthy. This is an interesting moment because Greenbull with his actions and words suggests that most of the time admirals are stronger than Yonko commanders. Perhaps not a shocking revelation, but interesting nonetheless, and it makes sense since if there are usually 3 admirals at a time, while there are 4 Yonko, it would be weird for the admirals to be struggling with every Yonko commander. That being said, it does appear like Marco and especially Ben Beckman stand out as being pretty special. And I'm sure Zoro will join that club as well. We will get into the specifics, but right now let me know in the comments where you would rank Greenbull in power compared to the other admirals we've seen, like Kizaru, Fujitora, and so on. I'd love to see how you guys rank the admirals after these latest chapters from weakest to strongest. But back to the story, and we even see Greenbull drinking beer through his roots, another potential clue to him being Zoro's father. After Sakazuki told him to not cause any more trouble, he does the complete opposite and calls for a battleship to be sent to him, and even tells the listener to not squeal to Sakazuki. He says he loves Sakazuki's cut no corners attitude, and he wants to hear Sakazuki's praise when Greenbull brings him Luffy's head. So just the fact that he thinks he can take down everyone that just brought down Kaido and Big Mom also speaks volumes about his confidence and potential strength. Then against the defenders of Wano, the Red Scabbards Momo and Yamato, we see him use his Mori Mori no Mi, aka Woods Logia fruit powers. These powers make him a forest human, allowing him to create control and even transform into flora. In his own words, the forest is just as much the cradle of life as the sea. It is pure Logia, nature itself. And that use of the word pure Logia makes me wonder if this is a special category even among Logias, just like Mythical Zone is a special category among zones. But anyways, all of this is very hype, as is seeing him combine with the nature around him. Using the earth like an organic mecha, he can make giant arms pop out of it and use them to attack his opponents. Still, we can't say the result we saw was that impressive. He cries, "Yow!" That's some tough hockey when Yamato hits his head. He then traps Momo's dragon form with roots pretty effortlessly. Raizo uses fire, and if you know your Pokemon, you know that's super effective against a grass type. It looks like it works at first, but then Aramaki makes it clear he's only playing around, saying, and I quote, "You think I could hack it as an admiral if I was actually susceptible to such an obvious weakness?" End quote. His root stabs Raizo and he absorbs the nutrients out of him until he too looks withered and aged. It's clear that the Scabbards are having a lot of trouble. As is pointed out, for every root they cut, another grows. Before long, Greenbull seems to have them all trapped in his roots. Desperate, Momo launches a blast breath and another until Greenbull has to grow back from something the size of a tiny clover. He's finally about to get serious from the looks of it before he senses Shanks' hockey. To put things simply, it freaks him out. He puts his hands up as if in surrender and says, "Look, I'm not picking a fight with you guys," end quote, and just leaves. Sure, he wasn't defeated by Momo, Yamato, and the Scabbards, but he didn't make quick work of them either. Then Shanks' hockey alone scares him off before he can even pass the Scabbards and get to Luffy. Compare that to how formidable Kizaru, Kuzan, and Sakazuki felt in the beginning of One Piece, and you can only say that Greenbull has been underwhelming for an admiral so far. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt though that he has much more up his floral sleeves than we've seen so far. Also worth mentioning is that Aramaki, like the other admirals and Garp, has a current cross-guild bounty of 3 crowns or 3 billion berries, so like Luffy's current Yonko bounty. And again, like all admirals, Greenbull is an observation armament hockey user. Lastly, I gotta mention the 8th Admiral Kong, who doesn't usually make it in these admiral lists, but should when you think about it. The dude is currently the world government commander-in-chief, but before that, he was the fleet admiral, and like fleet admiral Sengoku and Sakazuki, he was most likely an ordinary admiral before that. But even if he was somehow an exception to the you gotta get promoted from admiral to fleet admiral rule, he deserves to be on this list since fleet admiral is just a higher ranking admiral than a normal admiral. And yes, I probably overused the word admiral in that sentence. But moving on, Kong is also the guy who kept trying to promote Garp to admiral during Roger's era, only for Garp to turn him down repeatedly. We know he has to have mastery over observation armament Haki, but chances are he has Conqueror's Haki as well. Although we never saw him in action, we know that all fleet admirals have been very strong, and the guy who was fleet admiral during Roger's time is surely not an exception to that rule. Then throw in the fact that he had Prime Garp and Sengoku working under him, and that in this series where the strongest family is called Monkey, this dude is called Kong, a reference to exceptionally strong monkeys like King Kong and Donkey Kong. You know this guy has to be a monster. He is now the highest government authority besides the 5 elders and Emu. Hopefully we'll learn more about him moving forward, and I can update this section in a future video because currently we know the least about Kong's powers. Now we have to admit that the Admirals were hype, but the Yonko are even more hype, so you definitely don't want to miss my updated all 7 Yonko and their powers explained video, link on screen right now. Like and subscribe to help us reach 2 million subscribers here on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next one.